It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen. With Chris Clark.
The 2007 South Carolina class was, at that time, 6th in the country and 4th in the SEC, which is amazing.
Wes Mitchell.
You know, I think if you're South Carolina, you're aiming to at least be at 50%. Then in theory, you're adding talent, you're getting better, you're putting yourself in a position to compete.
And Tyler Head.
It's been a great week for South Carolina. On the recruiting front, still certainly plenty to talk about.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
And welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you. Busy time for Gamecock Athletics. Both you guys, of course, were out at Pro Day yesterday. And this morning, spring practice finally got kicked off where I heard it was a little bit cold.
Yeah. Still recovering. We won't talk about that much. Nobody wants to hear about that. I really hate when people complain about it being cold outside, especially in Columbia when it's like 50 degrees. Today, good bit below 50 degrees, I will say, in the shade. But, spring practice, day one. Not quite in the books for the Gamecocks themselves, but in the books as far as what we get to see first 6 sessions. And, I don't know, somewhat newsworthy. And we've learned some things already. And we did get, I guess, a little glimpse at maybe some position groups. We got a little glimpse at they do this drill where basically the defense runs out there and gets lined up, and then they snap a fake ball and they run to a fake play. And if you were like coming in as an alien and had never seen it before, you'd be like, what are these people doing? But I call that the depth chart drill because it gives us a chance to see who's the first team out there day one of spring practice. So I think that's always noteworthy. And, Chris, some guys kind of, I want to be accurate. I don't know if we would say position changes necessarily, but some guys who are out there maybe working in with some different position groups as well.
Yeah, and one of them, actually both of them, the notable ones that I'm thinking of, we were kind of tracking leading into spring practice. One of them, we actually had, some on-the-record information from Shane Beamer during our one-on-one conversation with him, or our two-on-one conversation with him, and that was Donovan Westmoreland, who played a lot of positions in high school. He played everything from safety to an edge to a linebacker. He even played some defensive tackle at the high school level as an undersized guy just because of his athleticism. Came to USC, and at the SEC level was always going to be, really too undersized to be an every down edge type guy. And so he was moved to will linebacker where he could take advantage of his athleticism and skill set and, did some good things from time to time in practice last year, showed his athleticism and learning and converting to be a full-time linebacker. But one thing that we know is last year on the scout team, he played some edge. And we also knew going into spring that given the situation there, given how many guys USC is down for a variety of reasons, that we'd probably see more of that. I think the question was, would it be more situational or would it be more of a full-time type deal? So as soon as we got out there today, Donovan Westmoreland was stretching with the edge group, we noticed, and then he was doing basically all the positional drills with them too. So, of course, as I said, they're down some numbers. Jordan Birch, Gilbert Edmond from last season's team transferring. Jordan Strong still sitting out the spring. He won't do anything this spring as he continues to rehab his knee. So you look at those three, those were your basically 3 starters last year. And behind that, still searching for some depth. And so Donovan Westmoreland moving. The other interesting one, guys, was the other position where they're down numbers, and that is running back. DeCarrion Joyner, number 5, over there working out with the running backs today.
Yeah, not to bury the lead or anything there. Joyner spending time at running back, I think, will be a hefty discussion point among Gamecock fans. And, interestingly, I would say Beamer hinted ever so slightly at this in that same interview when he said that they had some packages where Spencer Rattler and DeCarrion Joyner were in the backfield at the same time last year. And, so I don't want to – I'm sure Beamer's going to be asked about it today, speaking at 12:30. Don't want to characterize this as a full-on position swap yet. However, it did feel like it was a bit more than just, a package like we saw last year as well.
Well, if there was ever going to be a guy that you felt was versatile enough on offense to be able to do that, at least through the spring where you just don't have the depth, I feel like DK is probably your best choice, right?
Yeah, and, DK, to be a receiver, to be a slot receiver, pretty thick kid. Like, he has a muscular build. I think, guys, when you're ultimately always talking about, coaches talk about it all the time. Get your best 11 on the field. And they obviously have some worries at running back. They have some questions at running back. And, you look at wide receiver, and wide receiver is a spot where they, return some upper echelon guys. They return some depth guys. And they have some overall depth at that position, too, not to mention adding some new players that can help as well. So, I think in terms of those two positions, DeCarrion obviously has taken lots of reps at receiver. This is an opportunity for him to maybe take some reps in another spot, see if he can help there. And, I thought we saw probably last year, Florida game and on. He really ran the football well, ran hard, looked explosive, and they kind of introduced him more and more into the run game in those final few games. And so I think it only makes sense to see if you might have something there as far as getting him some reps in the running back room.
Yeah, and to your point, Tyler and Wes, we don't know yet if this is something that's going to stick or if it's, hey, DeCarrion is splitting some time between running back and receiver. Certainly when you stack up those two positions with receiver and running back, you feel better about the depth at receiver. You feel like you've got at least, for example, 3 guys that can be your starters. Today, Juice Wells, Marion Brown, Xavier Leggett, got some other guys behind them. You feel better about tight end, quarterback. So it's about, as you said, Wes, getting your best 11 on the field. When DeCarrion Joyner has played some packages at quarterback, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going all through practice just playing quarterback. Certainly the bowl game, North Carolina game, Duke's Mayo Bowl, that was a different type of prep because you had an entire bowl season and could do a lot of things there. This does appear, at least at the outset, to be a little bit more than just, hey, we're going to put you in the backfield and, maybe let you throw it, maybe let you hand it off. He's getting a little bit more of actual running back reps. And so it makes a lot of sense. Lots of experience. The skill set fits. He's 6'1", 216. This is not something that's completely foreign to him because whether it's high school, dating back to his high school days or in college, he's used to being in the backfield because he played high school quarterback, and he's used to carrying the football, and he's shown some effectiveness at that.
Yeah, and I like the idea of getting your best 11 on the field. Maybe this helps you do that, and that's a position where running back, you have a couple of guys there. You have Juju McDowell was coming back, but I think we've all sort of talked about the maybe limitations there with his size. Mario Anderson, I think that Mario Anderson has the ability to help this team. Like, he is capable of helping this team. I feel very comfortable saying that. I think the thing we just do not know yet is what does that mean for him? Does that mean that he's helping the team as in, like, okay, he's a good, solid back for you? Does that mean he's helping the team and, like, he's a second or third string type player? Does that mean he's helping the team in that, this guy's going to exit spring as the starter? I think that's a real possibility. I think you just don't know yet. And I would even dare say running back's one of those spots, guys, you just don't tackle to the ground near like you used to. I don't think Carolina knew what they had in Kevin Harris until they lined up against an actual opponent and watched him just continue to run through guys. It's different. Evaluate. This is not, the 1960s when you're just out there doing two-a-days and hitting to the ground and rolling people up and stuff like that. So Mario Anderson is one of those guys. I think you're gonna exit spring where they're gonna say, yeah, we feel good about this guy. What exactly does that mean? We may not know until the fall. So I think you got to figure out what all your options are. This is the time of year where you can, I don't know if you call it an experiment or not, but this is the time of year you can try things, and you don't know who is going to be available in the transfer portal. We talked about that, maybe, I don't know, yesterday or last week. A lot of people keep asking us on Gamecock Central, hey, do you think Carolina's going to be able to fill this need in the portal? The answer is, the honest answer is that you do not know, because you do not know what individuals will be there. So that being said, you can't completely count on being able to fill that need in the portal. I think it's a smart move. I think it's a move where you just gotta see what's there. Obviously, they didn't listen to us last week when I was pushing for Nick Eamon-Worry to play some running back. So this I guess is the next best thing. Completely tongue in cheek, by the way.
All right, we'll talk a little bit more about the running backs on the other side. Before we hit the break, though, I want to let you know the 107.5 The Game Spring Golf Classic coming up next Friday, March the 24th at the Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia. If you want to be a part of it, give Charwood a call at 803-755-2000 to register. It is $100 per person and $400 per team. We're going to have some cool autographed gear from some Gamecock athletes out there, and one lucky person will win the grand prize of season tickets to all remaining USC baseball games. Lunch will also be provided by Firehouse Subs. Don't miss your chance to be a part of the 107.5 The Game Spring Golf Classic. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. We'll be right back on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you. Speaking of Firehouse Subs, we always talk about the sub of the day. We also have some cool news regarding Firehouse Subs. Isn't that right, Chris?
Oh, yeah. Well, we have a couple pieces of news, actually, Tyler. The first thing is that today's Tuesday.
Yes.
And that means, of course,
Turkey, bacon,
ranch. That's the sub of the day. I'm super excited about it. One of my favorites. But there's a sub of the day for every single day of the week. So you could go to Firehouse Subs every single day and get a different sub of the day. And that still wouldn't even cover the menu. But today is Tuesday. So that's $7.99 for a medium, $5.99 for a small. You can get it at any of the 14 Midlands Firehouse Subs locations. Go to firehousesubs.com. Use the Rapid Rescue. You can order it online, and it will be waiting on you to pick up at any of the Firehouse Subs locations that you pick. Again, that's Turkey Bacon Ranch for the sub of the day at Firehouse Subs. The other piece of news, Tyler, that you alluded to, we will be on location once again at Firehouse Subs. This time, we're taking the show on the road to Sumter. We'll be at 1293 Broad Street in Sumter at the Firehouse Subs location from 9 to noon on Friday. And another cool thing, in addition to being able to come up and chat with Wes, chat with myself if you think that's exciting, Tyler, you'll even be there with us.
I'll finally be on location with you guys.
I'm super excited about that. We'll break bread, literally, eat a sub together. And I'm also told that there will be, as usual, some 107.5 The Game T-shirts, some of them signed by athletes that we've had here on the station. And we'll also have some tickets to give away to USC sporting events. So come see us 9 to noon on Friday, Sumter, Firehouse Subs, location 1293 Broad Street.
Going back into the running back conversation, now that we know DK is going to be with the group through the spring, if he has a good spring at the running back position, if Mario Anderson can turn out to be what we hope he can be, obviously you're still going to look at the transfer portal once it opens back up at the end of the spring. But does what those two guys do, and Juju McDowell as well, does the quality of spring those two guys have affect what you're looking for in the transfer portal at the end of spring, where, maybe if you're not sure about what you have going into the fall, you're suddenly looking for a top guy, where if all these guys have a great spring, maybe you're just looking for a complementary piece instead?
I mean, I think you're looking for best available regardless, That would be the way I look at it. And, I think if you're in a situation to sign a top player, I think you're just going to do it. And, if you need a top guy and you have to just sort of get a complimentary player or a depth piece or just something like that, you kind of hate to have to do that. But if that's what happens, that's what happens. So I think, in the NFL, a lot of times it's more about, salary caps and stuff like that. In college ball, I think a lot of times you're trying to sign the best guy available, the best guy you can get. And certainly skill set and fit and type of player, like is this a scat back, is this a speed guy, is this a 20 carry back? I think in high school player wise, to an extent, transfer portal, you're looking at those things. But for Carolina right now, for these two spots, for running back and edge, I don't know if you can be all that picky about, is he an exact fit, or is he exactly what we would sort of go after? I think for them right now, it's just about who is available, who can help you.
Yeah, so I'd go back to two things that Shane Beamer has said, probably more than once, but one of them he mentioned on the halftime show with Jay and Terry yesterday, and Terry asked him, could you exit spring and feel better about some of these spots that you've got more questions or concerns about? And he said, absolutely. I mean, part of it is just kind of what you guys said. You don't exactly know what you have. You have Juju McDowell coming back. That's your only guy who's taken basically a meaningful snap in not only an SEC game, but a meaningful snap that returns. Mario Anderson has done a lot of really good things, but at a lower level. So at a bare minimum, it's fair to say it's a question. It may translate very well. It may not translate. It may translate pretty well or some combination thereof. So we just have to wait and see. There's some traits that I think probably project pretty well for him, but they're through one spring practice, so we got to see. So they may get through spring ball. What if, say, Dante Miller gets his waiver and can play another year, and then Mario Anderson has a really good spring, and then Juju takes a step forward? You'll feel better. But none of that is going to preclude the staff from saying, we still need to go out and get a big back. And that's the second part of this, is that Shane Beamer's always maintained when he's talking about the transfer portal, we're never going to turn down a great player. There's maybe, a position or two on this team where even if the best guy, one of the best players in the country, entered the portal, you're not going to take a look. You're probably not doing that at quarterback. You don't really need it at tight end. But just about every other spot, I mean, they've had offers out on the offensive line. They've had offers out at DB, wide receiver. I mean, there have been several spots. And so running back, certainly, I'm totally on the same page with Wes. You're going to take the best possible guy, and that's even if you leave spring and feel better about it.
Yeah, I think, there are spots where you feel really, really, really good. Like, I feel like, at quarterback, you obviously aren't going to take a transfer guy. And, I'm trying to think, is there even any other position on the roster that I would just say
no?
Like if
none.
If a guy just popped up, especially if he's an elite player.
If it's a 1 year kicker or punter, you're probably saying no.
Yeah, you're saying no to that. But traditional offense or defense positions.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's it.
Maybe tight end at this point.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one I mentioned just because you brought in, you're spending 6 scholarships.
Yeah.
3 of them on transfers, 3 of them on freshmen, and 2 of those guys that you're bringing in are 1 year guys who are going to play a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Otherwise, you're probably saying, come on. So yeah. I think, but that's today's college football, because the teams you play are going to do the same thing. Nobody is just going to stand on their roster at this point. We make this point all the time. Nate Atkins was the last scholarship Carolina used last year, and he ended up, by the end of the year, being one of their most valuable players. He did more for that team than almost anybody. So, I think it matters how you sort of use these final spots.
And that was a spot where you're going, well, Nate Atkins, okay, I get it, even if you think he's really good. Well, you've got Austin Stogner, and you've got Jaheim Bell, and you've got Trey Kenyon. Well, as we saw, you said, Wes, he ended up playing a huge role. Shane Beamer even mentioned that yesterday with the guys, how Nate Atkins, Beamer was like, I didn't even realize, and I should have, how valuable he was going to be on special teams and catching passes, even beyond just being a blocker.
So we head into this break. I want to let you know about the easiest bracket contest ever. It's the 107.5 The Game Pick Your Team contest. Coming to Twin Peaks down to the Vista between 12 and 1 on Thursday. All you got to do is reach into a jar full of teams and pick one, and that is your team throughout the entire tournament. Then stay around and watch some hoops, and the first 64 people there to grab a team are entered to win. Grand prize is USC baseball tickets for the rest of the season. Also going to have some cool prizes from Columbia Craft, Little Pigs, the Gutterman, Champion of Defense, and so much more. It's the easiest bracket contest ever, the 107.5 The Game Pick Your Team contest from the home of the Gamecocks and free stuff, 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
And back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris, along with you, talking about the first day of spring practice for the Gamecocks. And Wes, you mentioned at the top of the show what you like to call the depth chart drill, where you saw different guys running out there in their formations.
Best drill in sports.
Best drill in sports. What are some of the other things that you guys were able to see while you were out there this morning?
Well, here's one that I am very interested in. It's not as sexy as, say, running back, receiver, if there were some type of quarterback battle, which there's not, but center. I mean, it's an important position. Eric Douglas, who's, I think, Jim Carlin recruited to South Carolina. He's played a long time, 6-year senior last year. Just brought a lot of experience, intelligence, and leadership to the position. I mean, look back last year on Gamecock football's social media for this example. If you haven't seen it, they're in the Clemson game late. It's 3rd and 4, and they're huddled up on the sideline, and the Justin King's media team captured this one brilliantly, and Eric Douglas speaks up and basically pushes for what they need to run, and he wants to get the ball to Juice Wells on that little screen, and they throw it to him, and it ends up working out because Juice is really, really good. Didn't block it particularly well, but he made about three or four guys miss. But he just brought a lot of leadership, and so South Carolina, Beamer's talked about this too. You're losing a few offensive linemen that played key roles for you. And so now you've got a center battle between maybe a couple guys to replace Eric Douglas.
Well, and I was going to say, Chris, so you and I were talking before we actually went out there, and I said 2 of my spring practice questions that I had that I didn't know if we would get answers to today, that I thought would be like one of those things that's completely probably glossed over, but would be somewhat telling. And that was, who takes the first snap at center today, and who takes the first snap at nickelback on defense today? Because I felt like that would kind of show us where their heads were at least going into the spring on those 2 positions, and 2 spots that, where you're replacing guys, you have to consider them to be somewhat open. And so we did get the answer, actually, to both of those questions, at least when the offense was out there, the full team offense was out there that you saw. It was Rashawn Lee taking the first reps at center. And on defense, Keenan Nelson took the first reps in the depth chart drill, at least, at nickelback. And what did that tell us? It kind of has a domino effect. DQ Smith playing safety. We knew DQ Smith was going to be on the field with the first team, assuming he was healthy, but we didn't know if it would be nickel or safety. And at least as far as how they go into spring, it seems maybe they prefer DQ being the guy at safety. Keenan Nelson Jr. played every single meaningful snap at the nickelback spot in the bowl game. Seems like they're kind of moving forward with what we saw in the bowl game as far as their approach to that position. Could easily change at some point as they try guys at different spots. But as we do what we do, which is overanalyzed, very small snippets of information, that's what I took. What did you take away from Vershawn playing center? That was a guy I remember all the way back when he was being recruited, I think. Certainly when he first got to South Carolina, he was always mentioned as someone who could play some center, who could end up at center. For the most part, he has been at guard, at least publicly in his career at South Carolina. But I did kind of have a feeling going in, Chris, they were going to at least give some of their returning guys a shot at that spot as opposed to just handing it off to Nick Gargiulo, the Yale transfer.
Yeah, there were a couple things to me that were interesting about it. So Vershawn, to go back to his recruitment, you made a great point. He was thought of at that time by that Gamecock staff as a guy that could realistically play all 5 spots, from left tackle to right tackle and everywhere in between. And when he was a freshman, he actually saw a little bit of playing time. He was still, actually didn't redshirt that year. Yeah, he ended up playing a few games early, and then he actually started a game against Vanderbilt at right tackle. And then, as you said, moved to left guard, where he's been for the better part of his career. You know, I think Wes coming in, I still think there's a good chance that Nick Gargiulo ends up winning the center job. And Lee, because of his versatility, could play elsewhere for you as well. I think I probably undervalued the possibility, if that's the right word, of Lee playing center. I was thinking of it more in terms of, okay, there probably is going to be a guy from the roster, but would it be Trey Jones, for instance? They got the first look. Trey Jones today was working at right guard, if I'm not mistaken, and Lee at center. Now, Nick Gargiulo, the Yale transfer, was still playing center. He was snapping plenty in practice. And if he indeed is someone that you feel like you want to get on the field, maybe even start, then you can always shift Lee over to another spot because he's got plenty of experience doing that.
Well, I think it's 2 guys, or it's 3 guys for 2 spots is the way I'm looking at it. Now, certainly another guy could jump up in there. Every year you see somebody who you're not really counting on steps in and just takes such a big leap, such a big jump on the field that they force the coaches to have them in the conversation as well. But I sort of handicap this thing as Nick Gargiulo, Vershawn Lee, and Trey Jones as the 3 guys for one guard spot and the center spot. And so it seems like that is still the case. May the best men win, and you're gonna need that depth at some point. Even if you don't win that job right now, you still have the entire preseason fall camp as well, where I think those guys will battle it out. And you, of course, are going to have guys banged up. You're going to have injuries. That's always the case. But, I'll be curious, Chris, to see. I mean, it feels like down the stretch last year, they kind of liked what they had to solidify that left side. Jalen Nichols at left tackle. Ja'Kai Moore really kind of solidified the left guard spot. It seems like that's where they like them. I've always kind of liked the possibility of flipping those 2 and maybe having Ja'Kai on the outside, but this kind of seems to be where they want it to be. But it is kind of, I think it speaks to South Carolina's recruiting on the offensive line. As much as people do sometimes kind of hate on offensive line play in general everywhere on the planet, I feel like. They obviously lost a bunch of guys off the line, but you're not looking at that position saying, oh, this is a complete rebuild. Nobody's played there. What are they going to do? For the most part, everybody that's stepping into it's a larger role, no doubt, but everybody who's stepping into a larger role has had playing time already, and they've been able to get experience.
You mentioned Gargiulo coming over from Yale, competing for the center spot. The other offensive line transfer is Fugar from Western Illinois. Do you expect him to compete for any of these spots, or is he most likely going to be a backup guy?
I would say too early to tell, but for the most part, I of the two, I certainly gave Gargiulo a much better chance to get in there, than Fugar. And, I think Fugar's a guy with 3 years of eligibility left. I think they brought him in not so much as like a finished player, a finished product as far as what he is going to be. I think more so as, all right, here's a big athletic kid who much more is along the lines of an SEC measurables than maybe at the place he was at before. I didn't see a guy, at least a little bit of film I saw, as being like a ready-made step in and start type player. Now, again, if you have injuries, if you have spots open up, maybe that is forced on him. So I think it's an important spring for him, maybe to try and lock down one of those backup tackle spots, and then potentially move into more of a situation where you're fighting for a starting role next offseason. I will say this, too. Having some guys who can move around, you're not always necessarily looking for, all right, who's my next best guard specifically, or who's my next best tackle. It's kind of sometimes, if you have enough versatile guys, it's, all right, who are my best five? Then it's who is my sixth best player regardless. And so if, for example, if a tackle were to, for some reason, have to come out and you feel good about these interior guys, maybe the odd man out in that Gargiulo, Vershawn Lee, and Trey Jones mix, maybe they slide in there. Maybe Ja'Kai Moore slides out to right tackle or something if you had to. I think there is some versatility in this group, and that helps your depth as well. But certainly Fugar looks the part of SEC offensive tackle physically. It's just going to be a matter of how quickly he transitions to SEC play and how quickly he can come along in some of the finer techniques of playing that spot.
Before we hit a break here, I want to take a minute and tell you about Amy Mason Cup State Farm. When my family was looking to switch and save on our insurance, we called Amy Mason Cup State Farm, and her team took care of the rest. Whatever types of insurance you need. If you need home, auto, business, boat, it's boat season, make sure you get that situated. Renter's insurance, life insurance, anything of the sort, give her office a call. She's a South Carolina native and a local agent, and she and her team can give you a personalized quote to meet your needs and help you switch and save. Again, you can call her, 803-772-5554. Visit her website at amymasoncup.com. That's MASINCUPP, amymasoncup.com. Or drop by our office. Pay her a visit, 612 St. Andrews Road, Suite 4 in Columbia, right off of I-26, amymasoncup.com. Give her a call. Visit her website today. Get yourself a personalized quote to meet your insurance needs and help you save. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Come back on the other side, wrap up today's edition of Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Look ahead to some of the upcoming spring practices after today here on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
Back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. A couple more minutes to go here. Jay and Terry coming up on the other side with the halftime show. And with these spring practices, they're not every single day. I believe it is Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, if I'm correct. And you guys get to see a small portion of each one of those practices. Are you watching the same things happen at each practice, or does it get mixed up between each session?
We get to see, just one quick note, not every practice. We get to see, I think our next one, I don't have it right in front of me, I think it's the 23rd.
Okay.
So we'll get some viewing windows of about 6 periods or so of practice. So roughly, 20 to 30 minutes, just depending of some of these practices. But yeah, there are different things. It depends on some factors. We try to spread out as a team and try to, catch some different things. As Wes said, the depth chart drill, as he's coined it, trademarked, that's one that we always are looking closely at. But it kind of depends on what they're doing. If there's a lot of special teams drills and things like that, generally what I'm doing is, especially on day one, day one, you've got a lot of newcomers to this team, and that can be anything from, say getting a good look at Trey Knox and Josh Simon and how they look physically to, seasoned, experienced guys. Or it may be, well, let's go see what Lenore Sellers looks like at quarterback. Let's go see what Desmond Umeozulu looks like at the edge position, and a lot of other guys. So many new faces, whether it's transfers or early enrollee freshmen with this team, that part of that is just trying to figure out, okay, are there position moves, and what do some of these guys look like physically? As we progress into spring, if we get, say, some 11-on-11 periods, then maybe that's a time where you can take a closer look at some actual on-field play. But it does kind of depend on what we're seeing and what we get in our viewing windows from practice to practice.
Yeah, I think the chance to see some true 11-on-11s are few and far between. When you get those, you better soak it up, and it happens really, really quickly, as far as getting observations. So it's much different than it was, obviously, a decade ago when you're talking about Steve Spurrier and open practices and stuff like that. But, yeah, still grateful to be able to be out there and at least see a little bit. And we did, like I said earlier, we got some things that are small but that maybe start to tell a bigger picture. And I think that's what this time of the year is always about. Sometimes you can overanalyze it, but for the most part, you can start to get a feel for some things and in which way they could be headed, and maybe at least where the staff's collective thought process is going into spring. And, I think we got a little bit of that today, and we'll start to get more. Shane Beamer speaking at 12:30, and then we'll start to get even more, I think, when the position coaches and the coordinators speak as spring continues.
Yeah, I mean, there's still so many questions to answer about this team, and some of them may not get fully answered. Like, do we exit the spring with the coaching staff feeling better about running back or edge? That's very possible. It could be that Desmond Umeozulu and Mario Anderson, the newcomers at edge and running back, who are expected to play significant roles, might have really good springs. And if so, that's fantastic. I don't really think it changes your overall strategy if you're USC, as we said earlier, of going out and finding a back in the transfer portal. You don't want to be overly dependent on that. You need to come out of spring feeling better about this position. And same with edge. It could be that Desmond has a really good spring as a freshman. It could be that Tyreek Johnson, as a very experienced guy, maybe you're getting a little bit more maybe than you even expected out of him. Maybe Dawkins has a good spring as he's finally healthy after missing most of last season. Again, doesn't change your strategy, but you would feel a lot better if you exit spring feeling better about those spots. Will you answer some of these questions on the offensive line? I'm with Wes in that with the offensive line, I think it's just a continual process of trying to find the best five. To me, it's not as big of a question in terms of just your quality as to who your starters are, who your backups are, because as Wes said, you've got guys who you don't know who's starting at center or another spot or two, but you have options, and you got some versatile options who've played in the past. Then you got some additions to the team. I mean, Jordan Strong will eventually come back. Mo Cobb will eventually come back. Let's see how linebacker sorts out. And then David Spalding, if he can return at the back half of the spring, how does that affect the nickel position and the safety position, two spots that he has experience playing in the past?
We'll keep things updated as the spring rolls along, leading up to the spring game on April the 15th right here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. That's all we have time for today. Be back tomorrow. Jay and Terry with the halftime show coming up next right here on 107.5 The Game.